Hello and welcome back to another Maya tutorial. This time we're going to explore the basics of animating with dynamics. Now, dynamics means we can add fields like gravity, wind resistance, turbulence, and we can make objects move and react with each other without adding keyframes. So, to begin with, I need to set my menu set to FX, and I need to change my playback speed to 24 frames per second. So go to the bottom right corner of the screen, click on the orange running character to open your animation preferences, and then make sure your playback speed is set to real-time 24 FPS or frames per second. Click on save. And in this example I've got a floor and then two simple objects, and I want these objects to fall and actually react with the floor. And you'll find you can actually make objects react with each other even before they hit the floor as well. So you can have quite a lot of fun with this. First of all, select the floor, go to Fields and Solvers, and then create a passive rigid body. Now you might want to go into your options and reset the settings if you're on a shared machine. So go to Edit, Reset Settings, Create, and then select one of your objects that you want to fall, go back to Fields and Solvers, create an active rigid body, again reset the settings if you haven't already, Edit, Reset Settings, Create. Now select another object that you want to fall, and you have to do this separately, so select them one at a time, Fields and Solvers, create active rigid body. And we need to make sure we've got a lot of frames to actually play around with. The default number you have in your timeline here is only 120, that's only 5 seconds worth. So you'll find when objects fall and bounce and react, they can move around for quite some time. So give yourself around 500 or 600 frames. So I'm going to type in 600 in this left box here, press enter, and that will give you the full 600 frames to play around with. If you press play now, nothing much will happen. So if I rewind and press play, nothing's going to move. Even though we've set an active rigid body on both of these and a passive rigid body on the floor, they won't move or do anything until we assign a field. So we can press stop and rewind the animation. It's very important to rewind each time you make an adjustment. Now, to assign a gravity field, we can either assign one gravity field to multiple objects. So we could assign one gravity field to both objects. That means if we adjust the attributes of that field, it will affect both objects. Or we can assign two gravity fields, one per object, and you can adjust them independently. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select both because it's quite a simple demonstration. Go up to Fields and Solvers, and then we have gravity near the top here. Again, go to the options and reset your settings. Edit, Reset Settings. And there's a couple of things here you need to be aware of. The first one is the magnitude. That's the strength or the power of the gravity. Its default is 9.8. That's 9.8 meters per second squared. That's real life gravity. If you increase it, objects will just fall faster. If you decrease it, they fall slower. The next thing to look at is the direction. You can see X and Z has a value of 0 and Y has a value of -1. That means the gravitational pull is down. If your Y direction was 1 or +1 without the minus, then your gravitational pull is up and objects will just float up. So leave it as -1 for now. Once you're used to how this works, we can adjust some of these or have lots of different gravitational pulls on different objects going in different directions. Go ahead and click on Create. And you'll find now in the outliner we've got one gravity field. If you did have separate gravity fields for different objects, it's a very good idea to title these fields so you know which one applies to which object. Now if I rewind the animation and press play, you should find these objects will fall down and actually hit the floor and they react with each other. Now because the objects are completely in line with the floor, they just fall and they'll just bounce vertically. So what we could do is adjust these. We could just rotate them a bit. You can be quite rough with this to see what happens. Now try pressing play and see what happens there. You should find they bounce around and they move around a bit on the floor. If you have them higher up, so if I rewind the animation, if I move one of these a bit higher perhaps, and then press play, it will just bounce a bit more because it's falling a bit faster then. So rewind, press play, and it just bounces a bit more aggressively. Now, there's a few things we can do with this. So again, I'll press stop and I'll rewind the animation. For this next bit, I'm going to delete one of these objects because it's easier to show you with just one. If we have a look at how this falls, so again, rewind, press play, it bounces quite a bit. Now you need to really think about what kind of simulation you want. If it was, for example, a brick falling on concrete, it doesn't bounce much. But if it was a rubber ball falling on concrete or a desk, it will bounce quite a bit. And here we could select one of the objects, go into your attribute editor, and then you've got a number of tabs up here, and you've got some additional ones now. If you select the Rigidbody tab, now it says Rigidbody 2 because it was the second one I created. We've got quite a few different attributes here, and you really need to play around with these to see what they do. But the most used one, I think, to begin with, is this bounciness attribute. The default 0.6 is quite high. If we try increasing that, so let's have, maybe we have 1.2, press enter, rewind your animation again and press play, and it will bounce way too much. If you increase it enough, it will just bounce and shoot off the screen. So let's stop and rewind. Maybe we decrease that to 0.2, and it should fall and it will just bounce a tiny amount and then stop. So rewind and press play. If that's too much, you can even decrease it more. But play around with these, make some screenshots or some notes of what you do. If anything goes wrong, just try something again, but keep it simple. Try with just one object first of all, and once you get used to it, you can actually keyframe passive rigid bodies. So where this floor is stationary and it's a passive rigid body, we could keyframe that. Now, if we did keyframe this to just move away, the active rigid body will have nothing to actually sit on, nothing to fall on, and it will then continue to fall until it hits another active or passive rigid body. So try adding some keyframes if you want, see if you can make some kind of mechanical machine or simulation.